Welcome to the Sellernomics Podcast, sharing valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by Gatita, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. And now, here is your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, Rob Stanley here with the Sellernomics Podcast. So I got to tell you, I get a lot of times people come up to me and they ask about wanting to start a podcast. And I have to say that, there's some basic things you can do. Anybody can start a podcast, but I had the pleasure. I was in Austin, Texas for an event, and I got invited to be on another podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And during that podcast, I walked into this amazing studio in Austin, and I was just blown away with the quality. And Jake Sacco, we're going to bring in just a second, from Pouch 6 Studios. Him and I started talking and just found so many things in like that same vibe. He's an entrepreneur. He's done some wholesale stuff. He's started this amazing studio. And, we got talking about podcasting and just, nobody really sees a lot of the behind the scenes people, these podcasts. Myself, you guys all get to see Lisa Kinski, who's absolutely amazing and helps me with my podcast. And there's a lot of people involved in making a podcast. And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's one person just working a lot. But I want to bring Jake in, and we're going to bring him in right now. Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. So Jake is absolutely amazing. He's one of the co-founders of Pouch 6 Studios. And today we're going to be talking about creativity in podcast production. But before we jump kind of into, we're going to give a lot of tips on podcasting, people wanting to start out and how to get to probably, like, let's say, a full-scale studio type production at some point when you start to make it with your podcast. But Jake, why don't you just take us back a little bit and kind of tell us what started your journey that led you eventually to this, Pouch 6 Studios that I got to come see in Austin. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so I guess I've always been creative. I grew up playing drums, but I guess the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey started in around 2017. That was kind of like the height of drop shipping. Ended up getting into drop shipping, just learning everything from YouTube and courses and stuff like that. I was able to, it took a long time for me to figure out the right strategy for that business, but eventually I was doing pretty good sales, around like $700, $800 a day. But drop shipping, I'm sure as many people, have the same opinion. I didn't necessarily enjoy that business model and ended up selling that. And then following that, while I was in college, I needed a creative outlet. I couldn't really play drums anymore because, can't play drums in a dorm room necessarily. So I picked up photography and started shooting, photos of local bands. My buddies played in bands at local bars at Alabama. And then got more involved by getting into videography. Kind of like the whole editing aspect of it kind of brings in a whole another level of creativity, in my opinion. So I was doing that for a while just for fun, posting it on my Instagram, created the Q6 brand name with a buddy, and, started shooting videos from there. Eventually, businesses started to notice what we were doing in Alabama, mostly like bars and event venues, and started offering to pay us money. And I was a business major. I had nothing to do with, creative media or journalism or anything like that. But that entrepreneur part of my brain kicked in, and I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to work for someone after I graduate. Maybe I can turn this into a full-time thing and work for myself. So we just continued to grow that. And straight out of college, I kind of dove headfirst into video production. Eventually moved to Austin around 2 years ago with the company because there's a lot more opportunities out here in Austin for, advertising and stuff like that. So we kind of pivoted more into like the B2B market, shooting a lot of converting ads, testimonials, brand videos, things like that, high ROI, evergreen content. So, and, throughout the process, we'd pick up a couple of different kinds of gigs, one of which was podcasts. We ended up producing podcasts, built a couple studios, one in Nashville, and they have to have a live switcher in order for us to be efficient. So someone has to be sitting in the studio, pressing buttons 1, 2, and 3. So we knew eventually we wanted to have an in-house studio, or not necessarily Q6, but me. And one of my good friends, Ryan Gallego, he owns another video production company. We decided to co-found a studio, and the original idea was just to have a place to shoot, for our clients, like an in-house studio where we won't have to pay other people to use their space. Just kind of as an afterthought while we were building it, because we didn't know what to do with this specific room that I'm in right now. We're like, why don't we put up a podcast studio? There's a lot of podcasters in Austin. Like, we might get some business out of that. The main goal was to not have to pay rent. But quickly, after we launched the first day, we were getting bookings instantly.
Wow.
And we kind of realized this is bigger than just, a way to pay rent for a studio that we're going to use for our individual production companies. And then, I've always been a big fan of automation. We don't want to have to do more work than we need to do. And really, the only thing switching techs do is press 1, 2, and 3 while they're listening to audio, looking at who's talking, switching to that camera angle. So ended up, backwards engineering some APIs and some UDP calls to the switcher. Wrote some logic that would, check the decibel level of each mic and then decide what camera to switch to. And pretty much that, allowed our clients to come in the studio, sit down, record their content, and then leave with an already cut video file, which took, a lot of the work out of it for them and frankly for us, which, lets us have a little bit higher of a profit margin than a lot of our competitors. But yeah,
and that's a benefit to them, right? I mean, it's a benefit that they get this basically 99% cut, edited, ready to go video that others aren't doing. And I remember early when I was starting, doing podcasting, around 2018 type time frame. And I remember having to go and edit the heck out of that video just to get it all sliced together correctly to look decent. And we're still talking with, just like you and I, just, one camera each type thing. And I know you guys are dealing with, multiple cameras in the studio because I've been in there. So listen, just real quick, anybody's listening, if you're kind of Amazon selling, you're wondering, why do I have Jake on? Listen up. This is important because, one of the things that's always talked about is driving external traffic, getting your brand recognition, building a group of followers and things like that. One of the ways you can do that is by video and audio. Audio meaning like a podcast, video being like a YouTube channel, which you all know that I talk about all the time, being that I had a lot of success, 7 figures success driving, people to my website from just creating YouTube videos. So Jake also does have a background in YouTube. So tell us a little bit about that. You were talking to me a little bit about how you went through some of the YouTube University. When was that? What was the goal of you going through that? And how did that play into this?
Yeah, so I actually use YouTube University pretty loosely, as in, that's kind of my main form of education. Instead of, relying on schooling or traditional courses, there's an immense amount of free knowledge out there and people that are sharing what they've learned through their journey. And I'm a very audio visual learner. So that's part of the reason why I've dove into video, but also YouTube's just helped me figure out everything that I've needed to, as far as learning any skills that I've wanted to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are some of the things that you've learned? Like, what did you use YouTube for to kind of, learn when you were doing this process of starting this studio, or even, the production company with Q6 and stuff, Q6
Yeah.
Media?
So, I mean, I don't have a traditional background in media or anything like that. Um, I just kind of had to figure everything out as it went. I'm a very technical person, so I used that to kind of figure out the ins and outs of, camera settings, lighting, um, and even like optimizing content for different platforms, optimizing content for YouTube, optimizing content for different socials like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
just a plethora of information out there for free.
Yep, absolutely. So there's something to be said there. A lot of times I've taught a few classes on, using YouTube for Amazon sellers or just e-commerce in general. And one of the things I kind of mentioned to them is you don't need to invest a lot of money to get started in it, right? You have this iPhone or this, Android in your hand, and it shoots, 4K, and it does great compared to the days I was shooting video. I had to go buy like a 1080p type camera that shot onto an SD card and then edit it and all that stuff. So you brought up a really good point, and what I'm saying is that if you're not familiar with using your iPhone or your Android to the fullest capability for the videos, the lighting, the recording of it, or the settings on it, there is free YouTube channels or even videos out there that will show you how to maximize using your phone, or even if you do have a video camera, to utilize it the best of its ability to shoot some great content. And that's step one. Step two is not being afraid to obviously get in front of the camera. But if you're dealing with a product, maybe you're in front of the camera, maybe not. I mean, I had 45 million views when I exited my YouTube channel, and you know what? My hands, they were famous on those videos. You never saw me because it was all take apart an iPhone, right? So you didn't really need to see me doing it. But you mentioned creating this software that helps edit. Was that something that you saw a YouTube channel on editing it? Like, walk us through a little bit on how you came up with this idea for this, I don't want to say hack, this software or slash tool that kind of helped with the, which camera to go to be able to kind of do these edits without having to have somebody 100% on there switching them around.
Yeah, so that actually was one of the few things that I didn't learn how to do from YouTube. I learned some JavaScript from YouTube, which definitely helped. I actually started to utilize ChatGPT to find different solutions and things out there. I also leveraged a lot of open source code. GitHub is incredible.
Yep.
So, little bits and pieces of different things here and there came together, along with, learning enough JavaScript and utilizing ChatGPT, got us to where we are today with our software solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about some of the challenges you had? A, with kind of starting the studio, and B, maybe, challenges obviously being that you saw that there was a need to kind of be able to switch these cameras around, and you came up with a solution for it. What other challenges have you kind of come up with or faced when you were kind of doing this whole journey to get this studio going?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting a brand new business in a completely different type of market. Video production is a lot different. It's very high cost services. A lot of word of mouth, SEO, stuff like that. On the studio end of things, it's a lower cost offering, and we're running a lot more volume. So a lot of, I guess, the challenges came from, how do we market this thing? What kind of language do we use on our website? What marketing routes do we use to promote the space? What platforms? Things like that. Obviously, with the software side of things, that you're always running into issues and bugs and stuff like that. I mean, there's been plenty of days where I felt like just smashing the computer, like just kind of fed up, couldn't get something to work, but just trial and error, and sticking with trying to figure things out has gotten us here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, Entrepreneur's journey, right? Every time people get a product and it's not successful, they get frustrated. Some stop and some go back and retry again and try to figure it out as they go. And I think that's kind of, pertains to exactly what you're talking about. You ran into a little bit of a roadblock. You felt like you were going to smash the computer, and instead you kind of pivoted and kept moving on. You're in a different situation in one sense. Not all Amazon sellers have partners. You obviously have a partner. Tell us a little bit about how you guys met. Did you have kind of the same goals? And how has that relationship been kind of going forward? Because not all partnerships are perfect. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I guess So the way that we met, obviously Ryan, my business partner at the studio, also has a video production company. While I was living in Birmingham at the time, we had a mutual client out of Chicago. And I saw what his company was doing with them. It was actually a sports apparel brand. And he was doing some really cool things with the ads that he was creating. So I talked to the CEO of, our client, and I was like, hey, let me get this guy's number. I just want to, connect with him and see if I can pick his brain about a couple things. Ended up hopping on calls monthly. We had like a virtual happy hour. This is kind of in the midst of COVID, so I would send beers to his office, and
Oh, nice.
and we'd all sit down and just kind of hang out and talk about different things relating to video production. Eventually, he convinced me and my video production business partner to come down to Austin and check it out. We kind of knew we needed to get out of Alabama. So, we were thrilled to check it out, and ended up just hanging out for 3 days. And by the end of that weekend, we were looking for a house for all three of us to move into. It just so happened all of our leases were ending at the same time, so it worked out perfectly.
It's kind of meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. Just a lot of these things I've found have happened with being open and being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, that's a great statement. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about kind of podcasting. So, one of the things that like I was talking about earlier is, people come to me all the time asking about getting started in podcasting. Some people may or may not know, my wife actually has a podcast going, using a lot of my leftover equipment as I upgraded. But, what kind of tips could you give, either equipment wise or just in general, to anybody who's looking to kind of just get started at their house with a podcast and kind of get going? Be as specific as you want, equipment, software, anything you want.
Yeah. So I guess I'd start out, and this is what we tell a lot of people, both on the video production side and podcasting, but content is king. We've found that a lot of people are super hesitant to get started if they don't think that they have the right stuff, or are completely ready to dive into it. If they don't have all their ducks in a row, they're like, well, I'll do it when I figure all this stuff out. But I think the most important thing with starting, a YouTube channel, posting videos on social, or a podcast, is to just start shooting content. I feel like the message and the content comes first, and the production, like audio, video, and everything else comes second to the message that you're trying to portray. As far as the equipment goes, obviously, audio and lighting are probably the two most important things. You can have a very basic entry-level camera and good lighting, and your video will turn out a lot better than if you have a $4,000 camera and bad lighting. So those are the first two things I'd dive into: just getting a good mic, a good preamp if you're going the XLR route, and then just doing very minimal research on lighting. 3-point lighting setups are great, and just getting a decent high CRI or color render index light so that your skin tones are accurate.
Absolutely. No, that's 100% true. I started with a Blue Yeti mic, USB one, and worked my way up to a Shure mic, which, is very expensive. I mean, I think the Blue Yeti at the time was like $99 or something like that. Just to kind of add in there, Shure's actually making a USB mic, I think around the $299 range, that'll just hook right up to your computer. You don't need filters and amplifiers and all that. So I don't even know the technical names of them, but I knew how to threw it all together thanks to a good friend of mine, Rich Goldstein, had this setup, and I just mimicked his setup. The current setup I have right now is probably in the 700 to 900 range for the microphone and the cloud and the solo, whatever I have, all these different devices to make me sound nice and clear. But people could get started with like even just a $99, simple microphone from Blue Yeti or something like that, or Yeti, Blue Yeti mics, I think it is. And, something as easy as that. I personally always recommend, if you're going to do online type like I do, I use StreamYard. StreamYard's been great. I know some people like to use, Zoom. Unfortunately with me, with Zoom, there was a lot of editing involved afterwards. I can do some really cool things with StreamYard, so those who are listening, we have words scrolling across the screens. I have intros going with videos, outros. I can switch around the look and feel of it for YouTube. So there's a lot you can do with that. Now, this is probably better when it comes to like a podcast, or if you're going to do something on a continuous basis. If you're just shooting something about your actual product, you can use an iPhone or something like that and edit it from there. But that's the kind of things I've used. And if you also notice, a lot of us have arms that hold the mic. Jake had some great ones in the studio there that come right up to you. So for those who are listening, Jake's actually sitting in this nice chair. He's got the, I don't know the right wording, but the sound absorbing behind him to kind of absorb the sound so it doesn't bounce all over the room. Whereas I'm in a basic office in my house that it's probably bouncing all over the place with a ring light and a Shure microphone. And using a webcam. I'm using a webcam for mine, and he's using some, nice cameras. But again, I think Jake hit the right point of just getting started. Get started. Get that mic. Get your, phone or a webcam or something, and get going. And lighting is important. I'm probably a little washed out. I used to have some big studio lights.
No, you look great.
I appreciate that. Probably need a little makeup or something, but anyways, point being, get started and get doing it. Make sure your content is good. Make sure, you have continuous content. Don't do one a month. Try to stay consistent and keep that content going. But Jake, I want to pivot a little. Now you mentioned you have people coming in. I don't know if you can disclose maybe who's coming in, and if not, maybe you could at least tell us how many people are doing podcasts in the studio. High level, content wise, what are they covering? There's some pretty famous people in your guys' area that we know of in Austin. Joe Rogan, if I'm not mistaken, is in your area. He's doing his podcast. But what, let's talk about your studio specifically. Tell us a little bit about your clientele and what they're doing.
Yeah. So we have a extremely wide variety of, different content creators and different topics as far as podcasts go. I think to date we've had around, over 100 different content creators come in here. We have a decent amount of like recurring clients. We also offer membership, so we have some people who come in every week to record their podcasts. I guess probably the most notable person who records in the studio is Chris Williamson. He has a lot of very high-level guests, including like Jocko Willinks. A lot of the same people that are in like Joe Rogan's circuit. He's actually been on Joe's show, I think, twice now.
Wow.
And then, we also have people, we have the Pickle Pod in here, which is the largest podcast about pickleball. So they've brought in guests like the commissioner of, the Professional Pickleball League, some of the owners of different professional teams, some of the top players in the league. We also have, real estate podcasts, obviously Amazon FBA podcasts.
Yep.
and then, everything in between. One podcast that's just about Texas history. It's kind of like a comedy podcast. So very, very interesting to, listen in and just learn about all of these different niche subjects. Some of these subjects are way bigger than I would have ever expected,
For sure.
So huge,
Wow.
huge followings, just that you would never expect.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There's some great ones there. And, the studio is absolutely amazing. So walk us through a little bit what is in the studio. Because I came in, I kind of went straight into a little seating area and then straight into the studio after talking to you. But kind of describe, you guys did something, this was really cool, I thought. Right when you walk in the door on the right there, you have this basically kind of makeup area. There's a photo shoot area. To kind of walk us through, how did you guys come up with the idea of having these sort of areas as part of the studio, which totally makes sense, but until you've been in it, you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I wish I had that in my studio type thing.
Mm-hmm. So me and Ryan have both spent a lot of time in, renting out other studios, just for our own like video production work. So we kind of learned, what we liked and what we didn't like. A lot of these places don't have like decent seating areas or lounges or anything like that. We found that to be extremely important. A lot of the other stuff was kind of built over time or by client demand. We didn't initially have like a hair and makeup station. It's two dudes starting a studio. Like we didn't even think about having a mirror. So, some of those things happened over time, but just, our biggest thing was making sure that everyone's comfortable being in here. It feels homey. There's an area for people to wait, especially if people are batching content. Like when Joey and Jamie were in here, they had like, I think 6 guests back to back. So
Yep.
While they're recording, another guest would show up and then hang out in the lounge. We have Red Bull and Liquid Death, and then Atmosphere TV. I don't know if you know about Chive, but you usually see it in a lot
Chive
of the
channel.
bars.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really just about making it comfortable, making sure there's always someone here, especially for new clients. We found that that's extremely important to make people feel comfortable. And then as far as the podcast studio goes, we have, up to a 3-person setup, 3 camera angles that are automatically switched. We even have this little button that can start and stop recordings, so that they don't
that's
have to
right.
expect us to do it. So as soon as you hit start, you can go into your podcast, and as soon as you're done, you can cut it off, which, gets rid of any post-production time you have to spend clipping the beginning and end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. SM7B mics. I think I see.
Yep. That's what I
one
have.
right there, and then 3 Blackmagic Pocket 4Ks, and then running a professional analog mixer, and then a little bit of software with compression just to make sure that the main mixed audio comes out very clear, and no production or no post-production needs to be really added to the audio there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big shout out to Fearless Sellers with Joey Roberts. It was a lot of fun coming in there. Jamie was also Davidson was in the background there. There was a person, I'm not going to name names, but there's a person leaving that's in the Amazon world and a person coming in when I was leaving. A lot of fun. We got to do an amazing interview in the studio and photo shoots afterwards in the photo room, I guess you would call it, with some great backdrops and everything. Listen, Jake, I want to talk more about, the studio and kind of what you guys do, what services you offer. I know everybody's probably asking this question. If I wanted to shoot a podcast in the studio with Jake, what's this cost? So kind of go into a little bit of this. Obviously what Jake tells you is as the time of shooting this, hopefully it'll raise his rates down the road because it's probably worth it. And he's getting super popular, but cover a few of those things for us there, Jake.
Yeah. So I guess our main and one of our popular offerings is our membership. For like a standard booking, it's right around the $200 mark for, the auto switching with 3 camera angles. And, that's pretty much like the done for you solution. We found that a lot of our clients don't have the time, or don't, it's not worth them investing the time into figuring out how to do all of these things themselves. So the membership is around $800. And, that gives you 4 hours a month in the studio, so that you can batch content. We found a lot of our clients will also use each podcast and pump out 4 to 10 short form content pieces. And I think, it's an extremely cost effective way to pump out a lot of content and stay relevant on social media. Along with those memberships, we also offer, bulk packages where you can just purchase, between 4 and 20 hours at one time, which gives you anywhere between, a 10 and 50% discount on that purchase. And then those hours don't expire, so you can use them whenever you want.
Very nice.
We also have that photo video studio. There's a lot of headshots that have been done in there. Rolling Stone actually shot headshots of a bunch of CMOs that were in town during South by Southwest, including, the CMO of MasterCard, Guess, Bumble, just a lot of big companies. But yeah, it's either of those packages and memberships can be used in either studio, so you can kind of bounce around. There's never anyone else in the studio while you're recording, so it's kind of like the entire place is yours.
That's awesome.
To do with, do whatever you need to do. We've
That's
got,
awesome.
Monthly we have a group come in. They bring like 15 people, and they just do headshots, and it's kind of like it's almost like a networking event where everyone's hanging out. There's some champagne. But yeah, just a wide variety of people, a lot of networking opportunities too. We have a lot of clients who will book right after another. We're pretty booked out, so they'll just run into each other, and then it's a very natural way to meet some of the bigger names in the scene too.
Absolutely. Jake, tell everybody if they're interested in finding out more about Pouch 6 Studios, where should they go, and make sure to plug an email to all the audio listeners.
Yeah. The best way to get a hold of us, I would recommend scheduling a tour if you're in the Austin area. Pouch6studios.com. You can find a lot of information there, as well as contact information, where you can contact us directly to our email at booknow@pouch6studios.com.
That's perfect. Yeah. So for those who are listening, it's POUCH, the number 6 studios, STUDIOS.com, pouch6studios.com. Jake, great having you on. Absolutely incredible meeting you in person. If anybody's in the Austin area, I definitely recommend booking some time to go over, check out the studio. Heck, maybe book some time and go shoot some content over there. It was absolutely amazing coming in there. I had a great time with Joey on Fearless Sellers. I know that'll be coming up here soon. And if it hasn't out already, I don't know what her schedule looks like. So I'm sure I'll get some email. But it was great meeting you over there. Absolutely incredible studio. Or heck, if you're just looking to shoot some headshots and use maybe the photo studio they have, there was great backdrops and all kinds of cool props and things to do in there besides the studio. And, they got the makeup booth there ready. So maybe next time we'll take the shine off my head. So no, it was a lot of fun. It was great meeting you. Didn't get a chance to meet Ryan, but Ryan, thank you to both you and Jake for this incredible studio. And Jake, thanks for coming on the podcast. It was absolutely incredible having you on and sharing kind of the behind the scenes of what happens on the creativity in a podcast production, because not a lot of people are familiar with really what kind of goes on over there at these, behind the scenes type things. So thank you so much for being on, and thanks for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, Gatita. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at Getita.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.